welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I am here with Casey Drummer, and she is a web designer for artists. Welcome to the show.
Hey, nice to meet ya. Nice to be on, everybody.
Hey. So I guess what I wanted to start with today, which was pretty interesting to me, is we're going to have you hop back in your Wayback Machine of choice. And I wanted to ask you, do you have any memories? Can you kind of reach back and kind of remember your first experience with a computer? Was it at home? Was it at school? Do you remember anything like that?
It was at school. So it was I think it was actually in typing practice when was my first time dealing with computers when we used to have those squishy keyboards,
Yeah.
and they were all like covered in colors, and I just remembering why are we writing when we could just squish these really cool typey things, and then all of a sudden words come up on the screen. I think I must have been uh I would say maybe about 10. I would say I'm 32 now, so I was alive when keyboards became a big thing. But I remember just not being very upset leaving that computer room.
Okay. Okay. And
Uh,
did you guys, I'm trying to remember how that stuff used to be set up. Was it kind of set up where it was like they would give you instruction how to place your fingers on the keyboard, but then was there kind of like a follow-up where they gave you like a few minutes of like free play to mess around or play like a game or something after that, or was it just strictly typing?
oh yeah, no, it was definitely a game. I think there was a game where the more you typed, the faster the car went. I
Oh,
think there was
cool.
another one that if you got like you were, it wasn't the same as Frogger. I don't know if everybody remembers that, but it was similar to it where if you misspelt the animal that you had, got ran over, which is not very great. And you're like, oh, awesome. But yeah, so they taught us where our fingers went, and I'm still an advocate of like all of my fingers being on the keyboard. I hate this business. And so I guess the love never left me, nor did my desire for frogs to die anymore. So
I think that's great. I think that's cool that they kind of work fun into it and also kind of like an incentive to like improve. It was like, okay, well, you were taught like the skill, but it was kind of like, okay, but we're gonna move this into like an area of like we want you to improve, and this is gonna how, as for like a kid's mind, you're like, well, I don't want these, on-screen
or
animals
frogs.
to, yeah, they run over or whatever. So okay, so building on that, let's just skip ahead a few years, and obviously your computer relationship changed and your typing skills improved. So
Mhm.
what from there, as you got older, got you interested in web design?
Uh, that so okay. So my past with just career wise is quite interesting, and was a huge pivot. So since I was like 6 years old, I have wanted to be a cardiovascular surgeon since
Wow.
six. Um, at the age of 10, I knew every vein, I knew every chamber in the heart, I knew everything that had to know everything about the heart. Kept on going into school at AP everything. Graduated top of my class, and then I went to get my bachelor's degree and to before pre-med, and I met with this lady, and she looked at my transcript, and she like with a, yeah, you're just not going to get
Oh
into
my
medical
God, like a
school.
total
And I was
disdain
like,
face. Oh man.
I know, isn't that just so like set six, and this just lady just pounded my dream. But that did stop me. COVID really stopped me and changed my path. So when COVID happened, I stopped going to school. I was two credits short from graduating, And I decided to take a break. And then my mother-in-law, she has her own business. Her business is Cowboy Diesel, so it's an automotive shop. And they were really struggling to get going. And so since I had this break in time, I was like, you know what? I'm not used to sleeping, so let's make a website for this lady. And I made it, and I kept on adapting it, and she kept on getting more customers. And then I just fell in love with web design and SEO from there, and just decided, well, we're just not going to finish college at this point. It's 4 years later, and now I'm doing web design stuff. So it truly wasn't a love for computers that made it. It was that made this career. It was the love for the community that did it for me.
Right on. Okay, I can kind of see that. That works. So let me ask you this, because I was thinking about this the other day. So you're doing that, and so you're getting into that and making websites, but at some point something clicked or something changed. So what was the next step in the process of becoming a web designer for artists? Because that's definitely a very specific thing.
Yeah, it is. So it's great that I started off with my story about college. So there is a nonprofit called Powerful Purses that actually put me through college. So they are a scholarship, used to be a scholarship for birth mothers. And went into my counselor at Gladney, that was my adoption center. And I was basically like just in tears about not being able to go from TCC to UTA. And she was like, well, I actually have a scholarship for you. And they had just selected, or they had just chosen to select birth mothers as their scholarship recipients that week. And so I was their very first. So I go through college, and COVID hits. I'm doing web design for about 3 years, and Powerful Purses always has an annual fundraising event, and I go in there just not really planning on just being who I am, and people start talking to me about what I'm doing currently, and I was like, oh, I'm a web designer and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden just artists, because the whole thing about Powerful Purses is their main demographic is realtors and artists. And so the instant they were like, oh, one of our mothers is a web designer, they just threw my information out, and that's just kind of what happened. It was just I was like, hey, I'm a web designer, and everybody's like, oh my God, we need some help. Yeah, help us, please. And that very same year, the reason why I got so many recommendations is because I became a co-chair of marketing on Powerful Purses. So I was the very first birth mother for that nonprofit to be a scholarship recipient, and I'm also the first scholarship recipient to be on the board, or not on the board, sorry, a chairman on the actual committee with marketing and all that stuff. So a couple of firsts within that scholarship, or that nonprofit, has been wildly rewarding.
Awesome. That is so great. So you've been doing this for a while. So let me ask you this. How much do you think social media trends influence business marketing? Because, just me doing this podcast for the last few years, and I kind of started it the same kind of time that you're talking about with COVID, where it was just like, "Oh, I need to reach out to people." And I had a co-host when we first started. It was just a way to like reach out to people. And then I kind of moved on. I've had different co-hosts and everything. And now I'm moved more into interviews and doing just wacky comedy videos. And that's just to bring more people in. So I'm really curious to kind of pick your brain about that, because things are changing so fast, just every year, every 6 months, every month. So what's your
Yeah.
insight on that?
So your question was, how does social media trends impact? remind me again what the whole
How
question
do you
was.
think like social media trends are influencing business marketing? Because that has a lot to do
Gotcha.
with what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, for in general, like general business, I won't like give advice about artists specifically. But I don't think trends are becoming a thing if they work within your brand. So what I like to tell all of my clients who get into it, who worry about like trends that are popping up, like those dance trends, things like that, what you're trying to do in 2024 is build an authentic brand that is purely yourself. And so if you aren't someone who is normally like very poppy and like, ooh, I could do a bunch of dances to get along with my marketing. Trends are great, like those dance trends and things like that, that are kind of more poppy, a little bit more Gen Z. But if your brand isn't like that, I don't think that there's a point. Because in 2024, everybody's trying to be the most authentic self, and the consumers are consuming authenticity. So if they could tell that this isn't your normal thing that you do, you might as well find something that works within what you like to talk about and what you think that the audience likes to talk about. But it's so 2023 probably was a place for trendy stuff, but 2024, everybody's just so it's so obvious if you're not being authentic.
Gotcha. Okay, so how have you seen what you're doing with the web design change in the last 3 to 4 years since you started doing it? Have you seen like a big sea shift, or is it a lot of things, or you're just gearing everything specifically client to client?
So for like just general businesses, I'm noticing that web design isn't as hard of a topic to get through. So when I entered web design 4 years ago, um, talking to a business who doesn't have a website was a little like pulling teeth. Like it was like, why do we need to do this? Word of mouth is working out. Like, what is the purpose? SEO, what? Like, I don't understand any of that. But as I feel like since there's so much more information about how web design works and the availability of that information being like in short form content, very similar to how my platform works, the concept of web design and SEO isn't so foreign. And I found it to not be as tooth pulling as it used to be when trying to convince someone that web design is a solid marketing tool. Now, for artists, the tooth pulling is still there. They there seems to be a misconception within the community of self-taught artists that social media and like local marketplaces like Etsy and those things are like the cream of the crop. Whereas like that's really not the case when you go through places like Milan Art Institute or just any kind of institute that does formal education for artists. They're all about like, yeah, web design is basically an open gallery for you 24/7. You can engage with the audience, blogs, blah, 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 blah. But so I'm finding that in this transition that I'm basically starting over with my teeth pulling discussion and telling them, oh yeah, this is helpful. Like word of social media is kind of pulling away for artists, especially on Instagram with the whole AI stealing art and pictures and things like that. That became a huge craze with artists. But it is still significantly taxing to try to convince artists sometimes that web design is a great marketing tool when they don't know otherwise.
Okay, cool. All right. Um, so this is something that I struggle with, so I want to pick your brain about this. So, how do you balance working for clients versus working for yourself and your own things that you want to express, and then your private life? Because this is
Whew.
just a crazy world that we live in right now. So,
Yeah, I struggle with that as well. Luckily, I am a very organized person. Well, I try to be an organized person. My boyfriend partner, he is a bit of an ADHD fella, and so he likes to do a lot of spontaneous things, which kind of messes with my whole work and things like that. And so him and I have agreed that I have a calendar. I'm going to be doing specific things during these allotted times, and so he could go look at them to be like, okay, this is a spontaneous event. So basically, what I'm doing is a lot of planning. That is ultimately like time blocking. I know exactly when I'm going to be at this time on this date. And it becomes to a point where you have to be a very well disciplined person to be able to do that. One thing I have been doing is on every Sunday, I sit down, I go to like a restaurant or I go somewhere and I take my planner and I take all my client work and everything like that. And I kind of like treat myself to a really nice, like lunch while I'm planning out my next week. But I intentionally make time for my work, my client work, and then my own personal life, utilizing that plan. But I also set like quarterly goals as well. So when I'm sitting down and I'm looking at what I have for that week, I'm also keeping those quarterly goals in mind when I'm building that up.
Okay. I'm guessing the way that you have this set up is that you're kind of work from home. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, let's say you're getting ready to meet with, could be a Zoom, could be a phone call, could be in person, a client. And let's say the person is, they go to a place, they work, 40 hours. They probably have family, they have other things going on. So when you're talking about, setting up a website, things like that, and these days, coming out of COVID, I think we were just talking about that with like mental health and authenticity. How do you suggest that they, um, I guess, maintain or do regular updates for a website? Because, we're talking like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I mean, there's just so much going on. And then, someone like me who, and maybe you probably did this too, where it's like you taught yourself how to use Canva to make ads to promote your art or whatever it is, your band, your music, your book, whatever it is you're working on. So when you're having like this initial sit down with a person, I'm sure that they're like anxiety ridden and they're just like, oh, how am I going to do all this stuff? So I'm curious, what that kind of like soothing kind of like, Casey like presentation of like, it's going to be okay, kind of like,
Yeah.
because it's more on the plate, you know what I mean?
hmm that is 100% of all of my meetings. Is me trying to calm people down. Yeah, yeah. So I actually, over the years, it just turns out that over communication is where it needs to be. So what I do when I first get someone who has a website or who doesn't have a website, let's just start off like brand new. Like this person is finally convinced that a website is needed for their business. I just create, so I'm also a certified project manager. And so that has really helped in being able to create a space where organization and calming happens. So even before I send out my invoice, they know exactly what's going to happen within the space of us launching their website. But then I create a document called what I call next steps, where I basically plan out like it's a checklist of things that they need to be doing for the first year after their website is launched, whether that's with me or by themselves. So I do things like checking on website audits if they're able to, and just general things. I hate giving away what my checklist looks like for my clients, but it's like blog posts, website audits, and then backlinks as well. There's like checklists throughout that. But I also, for all of my post website launches, I do a automatic website audit for all of my clients, so they don't have to worry about it. So it is something that I send an email being like, hey, your website is not up to date anymore, and this is why. And this is how to fix it. If you would like me to fix it, I can. So it's not, I try to take away the spookiness of websites by utilizing my planning. And it tends to be relieving. Sometimes I still get panic emails, but they don't really last for all that much, for all that long, once I tell them like what's going on and everything like that.
Okay. So in the interest of transparency and authenticity, I'm glad you brought up invoicing because I imagine that there has to be some kind of um tier system where it's like hopefully what you're getting into with a business like a corporate business versus like a mom and pop business versus like an individual or small startup group or just someone that has no money or something because like we were saying like we're all, at least most of the people I know, in this phase of like reinvention coming out of COVID. A lot of
Mm.
people are rebuilding their lives from the ground up financially.
Mhm.
So, what do you offer? You don't have to get into numbers, but like, what do you offer as like I don't know what other way to phrase it, like a package versus like a big corporation or like a mom and pop or like an individual artist? There has to be some kind of discrepancy there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I don't work with corporations. I like my whole business is about building businesses from the start up. And so corporations, they got it figured out. They don't need a small little fry like me. But Jesus, there's a fly just wanting to attack my face. Okay.
Right on cue, yeah.
So so my prices don't change based off of the background of businesses. However, with that in mind, I do realize that for artists, there is a minimal budget for marketing in general. I call them my bootstrap artists, where they're just starting off, they're doing everything on their own. So this is a great time for me to tease what I'm doing. So I'm actually creating an artist hub where it's going to contain a couple of things. So there's going to be an educational series about how websites work and how to build them and how to maintain them. And then within that, there's going to be an online community where you could basically ask a web designer. So I'm going to have a couple of partners in there to help me. But basically, you could ask any question at any time about your website and what needs to be fixed. And then monthly, within this membership, we're going to have like these workshops where, like, for a day for a few hours, we're all going to be sitting together working on our website together. And if you have a question about something specific, you ask and I answer and I like show everybody, oh, this is a pretty common mistake. Let's go through it together. So what I've done is realize that the pricing for my website, because I'll throw it out, my 3-page website is 1,500. So I noticed that I know that is an expensive thing for artists. So endeavor to not reduce my prices and reduce my worth, I'm creating a space for artists who can't who could afford like $100 per month on educating themselves. And so I'm hopefully going to be launching that in the next three months.
Mhm.
But I'm already finding that quite a bit of artists, because I have like a beta program that's going out. It's working out really well. And artists, I've noticed, are kind of the harder working entrepreneurs that I've ever worked with, just because the whole starving artist was something that's been thrown down their throats their whole life. And so they're used to being the idea that I have to work really hard to be able to make my dream work. That's already something that's ingrained in them. And so I'm hoping that with that informational, like that hub, will be a space for a lot more artists to think that website design isn't so difficult.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I guess also going back the last few years, I have seen the sea change where it seems like a lot of people wanted more. I guess I would call it like numbers and graphs and proof and things like
Mm,
that with marketing and websites where it's like now I think people are just like, I don't care about the PowerPoint. I don't give a crap about the Excel, how pretty your, graph is. Like no one gives a damn anymore. It's more like just be a person, just tell me what's up,
mm.
just and because I think I'm going to speak for humanity here and say we are freaking tired of calling a place and getting a link tree and getting
Oh yeah.
bounced around to something where like no one wants that anymore. No one wants that. Someone wants to go to a website. They either want to have just really simple, here's what you need to do. Oh, or here's how you reach this. Here's the person, let's just say it's an artist. Here's the artist's name. Here is a sample of their work. Here's what
Mm.
they're, if they're a singer or a band. Here are some tour dates. Here's a link that'll take you to the contact if you want to do bookings or whatever, or some YouTube videos. No one wants to just follow around this thing where it's like even to like make a purchase of like let's say they have music or a painting or something. No one wants to go through this like tier system of like man, just take me right to it. Like don't like make me go through hoops. So have you seen that as well and what you're doing with like a simplification of just everything, make it as direct and simple as possible?
Uh, I've seen a variety of that. So when there are some people when they're reaching out to brands that they want the simplicity of it, but what I've found with some audience members that's not the case. So what I recommend for all of my clients who don't fully understand their audience pathways and the way that they utilize their website is to simply do a thing called a heat map. It's on you could use this program called Crazy Egg because I don't think that is necessarily true that people want simplicity. They want to be engaged. And if that means that the information is just thrown in front of them, then sometimes that works. But sometimes people want to experience a website, especially for artists, kind of like a storytelling event. But not all people work like that. And so th- that is just we need to understand our audience members and how they actually utilize our websites. And the only way that we could do that is by running a heat map. And a heat map is basically a thing where you can run on your website and you could tell where people are clicking. You could tell how far they scrolled on on your website. And that is truly the only way that you're going to know how your individual audience is going to treat your website. And so I can't talk about the whole simplicity and wanting to, people to get on the page and get off of it because every audience is so different that it's to me, it's a waste of time to just guess. Like, let's just run the heat map, see how these people are engaging. And then if simplicity is something that they really enjoy, let's move towards that direction. But if that's not the case and they're engaging and they're going on multiple pages, then let's create a fun experience. Maybe like do something that's more interactive in a place that's like kind of in a hot zone on a website. So, for example, I had a client who wanted to do the simplicity route. And I was like, let's just run a heat map for a month, see what happens. And we found that the majority of people on one page of his website stayed on there for like 3 minutes long. And it was because of certain interactive spaces on that page that I created that I was like, let's just do this for fun. And it was actually really working. And so what we did is we repeated it on a couple of different other pages, and that really increased his leads, and then also increased the amount of time that people stayed on his website. So it's really up to like God, this fly just wants to get me. It's really audiences want to be engaged in a different way. And it's just, we have no idea what that looks like until we run data. And that is a big core part about me running a website design, is that I don't work off of guessing. I work off of utilizing data and then creating the website after that. Because I have just found there's one, I feel so bad about this client, but we were running this simple game for like a few months, and so I do a monthly retainer, and it wasn't working. And then we finally run this heat map, and we figure out why, and we could have figured that out like 5 months ago, about the reason why his website wasn't working. So I think that, again, audience just aren't well known enough unless you pull some data, and every business is going to be different.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, this is a fun one. So, if you could go back to your younger self and talk about your current career and
Mm.
give your younger self maybe any advice about making it a smoother transition, what would you say?
Oh, that's hard for me because first my 6-year-old self would be like, "Huh? We're not just in someone's chest? What do you mean? We tit tap on computers?" My I guess actually my advice would be, don't stick to what you thought you wanted to do. Um, for a 6-year-old, determining what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, it was not a great idea. And the longer I stuck to it, the more miserable I was. And so once I would let go of like what my life was supposed to look like, the happier I was, because I didn't set all these expectations for myself. And then I actually let myself rest because I was going to school full time and working full time. And I actually got in a car accident because of that. And so I would say, chill out. You have no idea what you want to do yet. Like, just move on. And like, if you like this one thing, go for it. And if you don't, move on. Life is too short.
Excellent. Okay. So, where do you see web design moving in the future? Do you see it more just individual artists? We're just going to be doing everything ourselves. Whereas, back in the day, I guess music companies, record companies, publishing companies, art galleries, they would kind of
Mm.
have a hand in a lot of that stuff. And I think if they can let you get away with doing 100% of your marketing, if you have an online presence, they're like, well, you just do that.
Yeah. Uh, sorry, what the question?
Where
Say
do
the
you
question
see
again.
web design kind of moving in the next few years? Where do you see
Ah,
it kind of going?
gotcha. Um, for artists specifically, I see a lot of people understanding it a lot better. I don't think that I think there's going to be a realm of possibility where people learn about websites, and then once they're able to, leave it alone. Like, ultimately, artists still don't want to do their own websites. They're very textile people. And so putting something that's not an actual like ball of clay or paint or something that's not in their hands, they just don't like it. But I could see my life being a lot easier on the educational front of people just understanding what web design actually does as a marketing tool. and how to be able to utilize it a lot better. And I'm hoping that that also means a really cool realm of self-expression. I think that would be really cool to see, especially if artists are really use their own artistic style and don't just if they're able to break away from the whole white wall gallery idea and they move into more of their style within their website, I think that's going to be a really cool time. And I'm hoping to see a lot of really cool websites being built.
Excellent. Well, as we wrap it up here, I guess let the folks know kind of maybe what you're working on now or thinking about rolling out, what's coming up for you, and where they can find you online and reach out to you.
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, I am doing the artist hub. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be rolling out. But what I'm ultimately trying to do before that is I'm trying to do kind of a trade and barter system where I'm creating a new office. And so every month I'm trading a really cool painting for a website. So if anybody is at all interested in like giving me one of their pieces of art for a website, I'm doing one per month. And I think that is going to be really fun and is going to lead to some pretty cool wall. And people could find me at jkonlinedevelopment.com or web designer for artists at on Instagram. There we go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know it's always kind of like, a little bit crazy to come on and it's like you're not really sure what's going to happen, but I had a feeling you were going to be amazing and you were, and I am
Yeah.
so interested in this kind of thing because as an artist myself, as a writer, a performer, someone who makes online content, I just am so enamored and I was just dying to pick your brain because, as someone who makes this stuff going like, there's got to be an easier way and there's got to be people out there that are doing this stuff that I can ask these important questions rather than just sending, yes, I'm going to type like this, sending these messages and going like, oh, well, I'm trying to do this thing and it's not working with this other thing. And you're like, tell me about these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Like
really
a fun little
appreciate,
puzzle.
yeah, I
Hmm.
appreciate you coming on the show. So just enjoy the rest of your weekend and thank you for everything that you do for people because I don't know if you hear that enough. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I do not. I
All right. Well, you
appreciate
have a
it.
great weekend, Casey. You were awesome. Bye for now.
Bye bye. You have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.